Welcome back. The Joint Parliamentary Committee to Review the Constitution has so far received 140,000 written submissions about possible changes to Section 25 of our Bill of Rights. Earlier today, I spoke to the committee's co-chairperson, Vincent Smith. Vincent Smith, welcome to the show. This is the one topic that everyone in the country is talking about. My cousins in Zanin want to come and have their say about this land issue. What is the process that you're going to follow from now on?
Twofold, Justice. One, there's adverts out for written submissions. We extended from the end of May to the 15th of June. So you could write into the committee secretary with your views. The second is the committee is splitting into two. Half of the committee is going to go to the inland and the other half to the coastal. So we will be coming to Limpopo very soon.
You understand that more than 140,000 people have responded. Are these genuine respondents or are these people playing around?
Well, we are considering them as genuine respondents, but they all come from one source. Now, I don't know that if they all come from one source, how genuine they are really, but we will consider all of them as genuine. It was 140 by the end of Friday. I'm sure when we get back tomorrow, it will probably be double that amount, because I do know other stakeholders have also gone to WhatsApp adverts to encourage their people to contribute. So it's going to escalate, I think.
Let me ask you about the genesis of this committee that you're heading now, and all your members of this committee. Many people would say to you that terms of reference are too narrow, that you're looking at Section 25 and it's a yes or a no. Am I correct in that? And that it just restricts you to this?
Well, yes, our exercise is to ask the question whether Section 25 of the Constitution empowers the state to expropriate without compensation. If it does, then well and good, we will ask the state to proceed. If it doesn't, what type of changes would you like to see in the Constitution? Going forward beyond that, there will be legislation that might be broader than our terms of reference, which is just to make sure that the Constitution and whatever legislation are in sync.
Isn't that a political game, though? Isn't that the fact that the ANC can't seem to make up its mind or make a decision about what exactly went wrong over the past 24 years?
Well, I'm not going to speak for the ANC on that regard, but you are correct. It's 25 years too late. There's those that argue that the Constitution in its current form is fine, including members of the ANC. And that the problem was the bureaucratic red tape or corruption and so on. There are others that argue that the Constitution itself is an impediment. So that's the question we're asking South Africans to answer.
Yes, that's a fundamental problem, that you haven't looked at the problem, and already you're asking me and my cousins in Zanin to just choose either or.
Well, we have, I think, looked at the problem. You would recall there was the whole argument of willing buyer, willing seller. That didn't work. We don't know that it didn't work. We don't know because we haven't actually looked at it and said, what's wrong here? Some people say it has worked. Some people say it hasn't worked. Some people say, no, it hasn't been implemented properly by the African National Congress, which has been in power for 24 years. I wouldn't want to get into that debate, Justice, because that is a discussion for the Department of Rural Development or even for the Justice Portfolio Committee. But doesn't that nullify your committee then? It makes your committee too parochial. Well, ours is to make sure that the Constitution is not in any way breached. And if there is a need to change the Constitution so that it makes it possible for certain things to happen, that's our role, purely to bring the Constitution in line with the will of South Africans. And beyond that, it's other committees that will then take the Constitution and make it something meaningful to South Africa. You saw what happened at the ANC conference. I was there. It's December 20th. It's 7 p.m. And a grouping walks into conference, 5,000 people in the room, and says, no, we want expropriation without compensation. That was a faction, perhaps, or let's just say it's a part of the ANC. Without being negative about it. It goes in and it becomes clear that the ANC is forced to adopt this resolution. And lo and behold, in February, this is kicked to Parliament and you get to hold the hot potato. This is, I'm putting it to you that this is a waste of time. This committee is a waste of time. The ANC can't solve its problems, so it gives them to Parliament to solve its problem. Well, Parliament took the decision in February, as Parliament, all political parties, I think except 2 parties that didn't support it. So, yes, indeed, it's an ANC resolution. Indeed, it went to Parliament. But now, unfortunately, it's the baby of Parliament, and the committee, which represents Parliament and not the ANC, has to come up with answers by the end of August. I don't think it's a waste of time. I do think people are impatient out there, and there needs to be certainty in terms of, does the Constitution impede, or is the Constitution not an impediment? I think certainty is required, and if it means we must go this process, then let's do it.
Don't you think we need a holistic view? I mean, what I'm asking you is, shouldn't you be taken out of the hot seat, given your skills, given all that you have achieved with many other committees in Parliament, getting us through party funding and so forth? Actually, this is not one for you. That you're being given a referendum here.
I have no choice, Justice, in terms of where the ANC sends me or the responsibilities they give me. But I want to make it very clear that we don't want this to be about numbers. We want it to be about the strength of your argument. Why do you want the Constitution to change in terms of this particular request for expropriation without compensation? So it's, for me, it's not a number of 10 said yes and 10 said no. Those that said yes, why are they saying yes? And those that say no, why are they saying no? And there are many people out there arguing about why the Constitution is fine. And we will hear them, and there's an equal number that says the Constitution is an impediment, and they must explain to us why. Because when we change the Constitution, it's a very serious matter, and South Africans must own it, not Parliament.
Many people would say, if you take many of the experts, many of the people who've worked in this field, they say to people like yourselves, to me, that actually we need to look at budgets. That since 2009 and since the advent of the President Jacob Zuma administration, land budgets have been have consistently been cut, and that is why you haven't had as much movement as you had in the preceding 6-7 years. How do we get that conversation into these deliberations, into this committee? Is that allowed? How does that work?
Well, I think it's allowed, Justice, because we will be arguing why you want to do it without compensation, for example. And you'd probably argue that, well, people were asking for exorbitant prices and the government just was not able to afford it. And therefore, land reform was being held back because of the amount of money people have been asking. Others would argue differently and put it on the table. And we would then argue that the budget is sufficient, the budget isn't sufficient, bearing in mind that we have a finite resource base in South Africa, and government wouldn't be able to pay a willing buyer, willing seller price unless there's some sort of forcing people to be reasonable.
There are so many sensitivities that have come up already. I'm wondering how you're going to deal, for example, with the fact that there are so many land, shall I say, occupations. You take an area just near where we are right now in Soweto, in Proteas land. People taking over a piece of land, saying we want to stay here, we want to live here. The issue in KwaZulu-Natal with King Goodwill Zwelithini. How should they come and speak to you? How do you factor all those live events into your deliberations?
You know, we can only ask for sobriety and we can only ask for patience in terms of people coming with real lived experiences, as you just explained. But we also want to send a message out that ours is not to assist or to finalize land claims per se. Ours is just to ensure that the Constitution in itself is not an impediment to reform of land, water and everything else. So it's going to be difficult, but we will hope that South Africans understand that our role, as you said earlier on, is very narrow, and it's not about dealing with outstanding claims or that type of thing.
Will members of Parliament be impartial? Will you, as a member of the African National Congress, Julius Malema, who sits on the committee as the leader of the EFF, are you convinced that people will bring their argument to the table instead of their party hats?
You know, I've requested at the last meeting that as the committee, we must be facilitators, because we will have an opportunity to put our own party political views to the public when we actually take it to Parliament. But for this process of consultation, I'm hoping that all members of Parliament in this committee are impartial and are facilitators. We are MPs, we are politicians. It might not always be possible, but we will try and use our skills to ensure that we keep to the impartiality.
Vincent Smith, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Always a pleasure after all the hot potatoes that you've handled in the past. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.